thanks so much for being here. I'm Danielle Afsorda. I'm the Community Outreach Archivist and Programs Coordinator for the CAHC Butler Center for Arkansas Studies. Welcome to Legacies and Lunch, Chasing Glory, the story of Little Rock Junior College football. This monthly program is currently being held at UA Little Rock downtown. Thank you to Marta for continuing to host us, and features talks on Arkansas-related topics. If you're joining us in person and you parked in our library parking garage, you can stop by the front table and get a validation sticker. And we also have complimentary cookies and drinks that you probably noticed, so be sure to grab some of those goodies as well. I'd like to also remind you at this time to please make sure your cell phone is on silent or do not disturb. And before we get started, we're going to do a raffle. So we're going to do one at the beginning and one at the end. The one at the beginning is for some Summer at Cal's swag. If you have not registered for Summer at Cal's, this is an all ages program, and you can get prizes all summer long. And we've also got a second set of Travelers tickets. You can go to a free Travelers game. So if you want to get registered for that, you can do so right across the street at the main library. So I'm going to do a raffle drawing for that. Who has 130?
The last numbers?
Yes, sorry, the last three numbers. Oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
A little Library for Life tote bag full of some fun little swag items.
Yeah, who does it?
And we also created a special tote bag for the 25th anniversary of Legacies and Lunch.
It looks like this.
Has our original Butler Center logo on it, so stay tuned to the end and you can maybe win this one. I'd also like to invite everyone to join us downtown on Friday, June 11th from, oh, sorry, I have June's date in here. Is it Friday? What is the July date? Sorry. July 11th. I just forgot to change the month. That's what happens when you reuse your notes. From 5 to 8 at the CAHC Rocket Lab, which is located at 120 River Market Avenue. If you're not familiar with where that's located, it's the triangular shaped building next to Ron Robinson Theater, and you can park in the CAHC parking garage and get that parking validated. We're going to have Perry and Hurd with an easy printmaking workshop. We'll also have Meredith Lee with our memory lab and have information about free high resolution art scans you can do through their program. There will be poetry on the patio hosted by Catherine Blake, and the Blue Umbrella will have unique gifts that embrace inclusion for all. So we hope to see you there. And not to waste too much more time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Today's Legacies and Lunch is with James Wethington. He will explore the history of Little Rock Junior College football, the first collegiate sports program at what is now UA Little Rock, tracing its origins from the 1930s and its resurgence in the 40s and 50s. James is an archivist and engagement coordinator for the UA Little Rock Center for Arkansas History and Culture, our partners at the Roberts Library. Prior to CAHC, he worked at the David L. Rice Library's University Archives and Special Collections Department at the University of Southern Indiana for 6 years. He received a bachelor's degree in history from the University of Southern Indiana in 2014 and an MLIS from Indiana University Indianapolis in 2019. If you have questions and are joining us via Zoom, please put those in the chat and we will alternate in-person and virtual questions at the end of James's talk. Please join me in welcoming him.
One thing I hate about being tall, you have to move everything around. Can you all hear me okay? Perfect. So I'm going to reiterate special thank you to Danielle and the Butler Center for hosting this, and also Dr. Cheslack for UA Little Rock Downtown. So I'd like to thank them for hosting this event as well. So I'm going to start our presentation off. I'm going to give a brief little outline for y'all. So I'm going to be talking about just a brief history, kind of encompass everything with the football team. It's not going to be too in-depth, but still give you guys a little bit of a timeline of what the football team looked like, what happened and everything with it. And then also what the status is of the athletic program at UA Little Rock now. It's completely changed. It's been almost 100 years since the founding of the university, so things have changed a lot. But I want to ask one question to start off with. Who here before coming to this presentation knew that the university had a football team? If you did, raise your hand. Okay, more than I anticipated. So I'm not native here to Arkansas, so I'm from Indiana, and I'm not a football fanatic, but for some reason, athletic history with universities are incredibly interesting to me to just see the dynamics of what happens on university campuses. But with the football program, initially started in 1930, it goes through two periods of time. So the first part of the program started in 1930 and only lasted until 1935. And then the university decided to cancel it in 1936. And then for about 10 years, they switched from collegiate sports to intramural sports. So there was no official sanctioned university sports at the campus. It was all intramurals. It allowed students to freely come and play various different sports, which we will discuss later on, except for one sport. And then eventually the university is like, we don't want to have one sport, we're just going to cancel it and make it intramurals. And then the second stint starts in 1947, and then it ends in 1945 when the university decides again to cut the program, but for different reasons, such as financial liabilities. And then with the up and coming rise of Fayetteville with the Razorbacks, as we all know, as I have seen over the last 3.5 years, WPS, which I did not realize for a year that stood for Woo Pig Suey. So, so we're going to start first. We're just going to start from the beginning a little bit. So when the university started in 1927, they decided that they wanted to start a football program because in the 1920s it became very popular with how football was kind of taken off. When I think of football, especially during that time period, I think of Notre Dame, so go Irish, if any of y'all are Irish fans, will. But because of popular programs up there, and also with popular head coaches, it started taking off a little bit more and more. And it's also kind of considered, the 20s is considered the golden age of collegiate football popularity, and then it kind of, I mean, it's probably the biggest sport in America. Everyone loves American football. But when they first formed the team, so Jim Lester, in his book that he wrote, The People's College, I highly recommend y'all take a read of that if you're curious to learn about UA Little Rock's histories. He states that student leaders also pressed for the formation of a football team, because in the 20s it was the golden age of collegiate football, an era of Red Grange of Illinois and highly visible coaches like Newt Rock of Notre Dame. And the legitimacy of a collegiate institution seems to be closely tied to the prowess of a school's gridiron squad. We could probably say that today, that as football is one of the biggest moneymakers for athletic programs, if they do have a program as well. So there was a student interest on campus that they wanted a football team. The leaders of campus decided to finally bend on that and be like, yeah, let's go make a football team. Let's see what we can do with this on campus. Fun fact, did anyone know that there was a connection between the football team and why we have the Trojan name? Awesome. Well, I didn't realize this, but the football team is the reason why UA Little Rock has the Trojan name. They asked the students, they're like, hey, what do you want the mascot to be of the university? Because we don't have one. Because commonly at that time, they were just called the JCs. And that really doesn't look well on a t-shirt, I think, personally. But the Trojans came to be, they thought it was a very fighting spirit. It was going to be an important thing for them to have as an identity for the university. So they decided to stick with it. And here we are, 2025, and we are still the Trojans down here. So 1930 is when the inaugural season happens. You're probably wondering, why is there 3 newspaper clippings? Well, if you follow even professional sports, you know that coaching jobs can be like carousel rides. One person's there for a year, and maybe they get fired the following year because they had a horrible season. Well, in this case, that was not the case. They were trying to find head coaches, but they kept having these head coaches either they quit because they're like, I just don't think I have time for this. So they went through 4 different head coaches in the span of just a few months. The first head coach was F.T. Harley, so he got hired in February, so they announced that they were hiring him. I was unable to figure out why he left, but newspaper clippings and the yearbooks that we also have on display over here didn't really explain what was going on. So then the next head coach that they decided to hire was Wayne B. Stone. This one is very fascinating because the university stepped in, because he was in med school, and they said, you should probably not coach in the middle of med school. That's kind of a heavy load to have, which I could not imagine going to school, trying to learn how to be a doctor, and then trying to be a football coach. So he stepped down because of that. And then they finally decided to have two co-head coaches. So they hired Kenneth Bird and Johnny Estrada. And Johnny Estrada was a student. He was a chemistry major at the university at that time. So that is, I would not imagine the sciences and football, but that's a whole other thing. But they finally did settle on a head coach, on the two head coaches with Bird and with Estrada. And unfortunately, they were only there for a year, but we'll go into that a little bit more later. Well, you all might also be wondering, well, where did this football team play? Sorry.
Having trouble hearing.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
You might just need to move the mic closer to your mouth, honestly.
I'm just gonna do this, I don't care.
Yeah.
Can you all hear me now? Sorry. But
Yeah.
Oh. Perfect. So the next logical question would be, where are we gonna play football here in Little Rock? Because in the 1930, they didn't have War Memorial Stadium in Midtown. So they decided there was already a pre-existing field, which was Kavanaugh Field. So that's currently located, where it was originally located was behind Little Rock Central High School. So that's where the football team played for their first 4 years. But also at that time, the Little Rock Travelers played as well. So they are the precursor to what we have now, which is the Arkansas Travelers baseball team. So they played there. This photograph is undated, so right now we don't really know what the time period is, but I'm gonna assume that's probably from the 20s, I think, from the cars. But from that, they decided to start playing some football there. And they started playing behind Little Rock Central High. But the 30s was not too kind to the football team, as you can tell with their horrendous record. At one time, I thought, oh, wow, this must be like the Cleveland Browns. But no, it was their football team, so they did try really hard to win games. Their first season, they were defeated all 6 times. And then they finally got their win against a junior college in Texarkana. So they won that game finally. But with that, they only won 28% of their games. And I don't think we all have to be statisticians to figure out that is not a good record to have. We all can't be not Tom Belichick, Bill Belichick or Tony Dungy's, but I mean, that's still not a great looking record to have. But with that, the university eventually decides they want to cut the football program, primarily because they viewed it as a financial liability. If we're not going to have a good turnout or a good football team, no one's going to come to games. As you can clearly tell, that the most wins that they won was 2 wins, and that was for the last 3 seasons that they were there. But they also believed that the university was lacking star like athletic students to come, because I mean, if you're not playing well, you're not going to be able to recruit well. If you think of like the powerhouse colleges with football programs like Alabama, I mean, they have winning programs and a lot of star players want to go there. But at that time, Fayetteville wasn't also doing too hot with their football program either. So they were still trying to struggle and figure out where they were. So the university decided to switch everything to intramurals except for basketball. And the last head coach from 31 to 34 was Alvin Longstroth, and he was also the men's basketball coach on top of being the football coach and the athletic director. So he had 3 different hats on all at the same time. I do not envy that man with that job. So next, we enter the transition to intramurals. So in the summer of 35, that's when the university decides to announce that they are transitioning everything to intramurals. With that, it was kind of students weren't happy about it because they thought that a football program would be really beneficial for the university. The university was like, this is a done deal. We're not gonna do this anymore. We'll allow basketball, but that only happens for 1 year. And then they're like, maybe we don't need to have basketball either, because they were not doing so hot either in the 30s. When they eventually decided to go to intramurals, they decided that they would incorporate these sports. And I don't know about y'all, some of these sound like what we have today. Others, I cannot imagine having a boxing team for one thing with the university, or rifle shooting. That does not seem very timely to have something like that. But they also had swimming, golf, tennis, and fencing. Jim Lester in his book, and also in the newspapers that are available at CAHC, they were discussing like, oh, well, we have a tennis champion who did like singles or doubles. They played the YMCA downtown because the original university was located downtown. But eventually the students announced that they were very disappointed because there was a lack of collegiate spirit on campus that usually is generated with friendly competitions with sports. So with that, the university tried to incorporate other opportunities for activities or events. So they did, instead of homecoming, they would do assemblies, which that does not seem so glamorous to just let's gather everybody together when it's supposed to be homecoming and just talk. But they also did lawn luncheons, and they also did a dance as well for homecoming on alumni day. But eventually, other students decided to pick up on different ways to fill up their time instead of having a football program. So they eventually started having more social events between faculty and students, but they also started having more fraternities and sororities on campus as well, and more group activities too. But also they just didn't have a good athletic program on campus. So that's why the university, I think I've already beat this dead horse a little bit, but they didn't have a real big instance of like, if the students don't come to us who have these superstar athletic abilities, why have something and throw money what maybe look like a bottomless pit? But there was hope. I know I sound like Star Wars over here, but I don't have Obi-Wan to help me with this. But we have John A. Larson to thank. So he was the second president for the university. He was a huge contingent on bringing football back. He decided that it was important because he saw how much students were very unhappy with how there was nothing to really do on campus, and all these recreational activities did not really suffice. This desire to have a collegiate sports team that the university could get behind and the student body could get behind. From my alma mater at USI, our big thing is, because we don't have football, we go after basketball, and that is our big camaraderie as a university together, especially with the student body. So they decided that they wanted to improve the student morale on campus. So then they did. But just like before, we need a head coach. But who is going to fulfill that role? And the university found a local individual who was living here in town that would become, who would lead the charge for in the 40s, 1947, when they restarted the football team to bring the program back. And that man was Jimmy Caron. So he originally hailed from Lake Village here in Arkansas. He did have football prowess as well. He played halfback for 3 years as a starter, and he played at Auburn Polytech College, which some of y'all might know as Auburn University. So he was a war hawk when he was there. But he also served in the U.S. Navy during World War II. And with that, he decided, well, his comrades wanted to have a football team. So he's like, well, I played football. This can't be that difficult. So with that, he started a football program with the Navy base, and he ended up leading this Navy base to a championship amongst other Navy bases in California, where he was stationed at that time. So he comes to campus, he ends up making a huge difference, kind of did something different in comparison to the previous 3 head coaches did not even attempt to try. and he tries to shake up the norm of what it's like to be a coach. So in that time, the previous 3 coaches didn't really do much on campus besides just coaching. But he decides, he goes to the university and says, we need to get scholarships. If we don't have scholarships, we can't bring no one here. No one's gonna wanna come here. Also, we need to allow, we need to have housing for these students. We need to provide that housing for them. So the football team was one of the first teams to actually get their own housing so they could live. And also they were allowed money to have food. So this is kind of different for what was going on at that time, but he also went as far as he would meet students if they lived out in the rural country where there was not a football stadium. There was notes in the Democrat where he would go out to these rural areas and he would just bring wood and make a football I don't even know what the name of it is, where you kick field goals. Thank you. You can totally tell I'm not a football fan. He would make a goalpost and use that to train some students who may be interested, or he saw an opportunity in them to perform and play football well. But he also saw the importance of, if we start winning games, maybe the university will give us more money and we could possibly make this into a bigger deal than what it was before. So that's what he ended up doing. But also it goes back to the question, well, where are we gonna play? Because that time Kavanaugh Field was not around anymore. So they decided they were gonna go back. So at that time they built Tiger Stadium, which is now Quigley Cox Stadium right behind Central High. So they decided that's where we're gonna start playing our football games. So they started playing there from 47 until 49. And then in 49, that's when War Memorial was built and completed. So that's when they moved from back behind Central High, and then they moved to Midtown, and that's where they ended up playing the latter part of their football games. But not unlike the Cowboys, the Trojans actually were getting things done. Yes, I know. So their first season, if y'all can remember, the most wins that they had was 7 wins in 5 years. Their first year alone, they won 6 games. This was their first winning season. But they also got to go to a bowl game. They went to the Coffee Bowl. Yes, the Coffee Bowl. You may be wondering, where is the Coffee Bowl held at? Well, 1947, it is in Coffeeville, Kansas, of all places. The stadium is still there from Google Maps, from what I've seen. It is very interesting. Maybe one day I'll go there and be like, wow, and then I can come back to Arkansas. But he ended up winning a great amount of respect because this was the first postseason win in football, in the football program's history. So this is a huge event and huge occasion for the football team to have that notoriety that, hey, we can play some other really well-bound, well-played junior colleges. But also, the Coffee Bowl is still around. If any of y'all have gone to the Bailey Center, so they actually house the Coffee Bowl trophy, which is, as you can see, it's out on display, so you can go and you can take a look at it. You're welcome to go in there whenever they're open as well. So after that, they had big hopes for their 1948 season. So as we're continuing to trek along, they actually win 7 games. So they beat their record that they had within the first 5 years when they were there. But unlike their first year back, they unfortunately did not win their bowl game. So they were at the Junior Sugar Bowl, which was not in New Orleans. It was in Monroe, Louisiana. It was on campus at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. So that stadium is still around. That's Brown Field. They lost 18-17, but it was their second straight appearance to play in a postseason bowl game. But there was more to come. So finally in 1949, they decided we're going to continue playing some football. But this time, in comparison to the other 2 teams, they did something that was never done and would not be replicated. They ended up going undefeated. They went 10-0. They went to their 3rd straight bowl game. and they ended up being selected and they went to the Junior Rose Bowl, which the Rose Bowl is in Pasadena, California. So they ended up going and they went out in a triumphant procession. They took a bus or trains from Little Rock all the way to California. I could only imagine what that would have been like. But they ended up, they had some issues with some players, some coaches, but also the Arkansas Intercollegiate Conference, which they played in, had some issues. They're like, well, there's some eligibility issues with 5 players that they thought were not okay, were not like got the thumbs up to play football. But eventually that was just dismissed. Apparently they just had enough. They're like, we're tired of talking about this. I could only imagine if that was the case today with some players. But the NCAA does things completely different in comparison to what there was going on in 1949. But they had hundreds of students, family members, and boosters from the university ended up all going to Pasadena to see the Junior Rose Bowl. And this is where their crowning achievement of winning the Junior Rose Bowl, and they beat a California team out there as well. I'm also going to say something controversial, so if you're Razorback fans, please do not throw tomatoes or do not come to Little Rock and come find me. Little Rock had the first national championship. I do not care what Fayetteville says. We got it in 1949, and we have a newspaper to prove that it says, and we can all repeat it, Little Rose Bowl and National Junior College Champions. If that doesn't say who had the first championship, we did. Fayetteville did not. So they took a little bit longer to get there, but we ended up getting that. So it was exciting. The university was cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on it. It was all over the news. The photograph that's on the right with the team, that's actually the 1949 football squad. So they all celebrating, they had won. Newspapers were going out. I think this was also the first time a team from the East won this championship, because I think all the teams at that point were all in California and they won. So it's kind of another little tip of our hat that Little Rock is, we can handle our way out there. So with that, so we received our trophies. The Junior Rose Bowl championship is going to be on the right. So it's going to be that bowl. Let me see if I can. Yeah, it's going to be that bowl right there. The other two, this is a charity football game that they won early in 1949 at War Memorial. From what I saw, it was a charity game against another college from Texas that came all the way up here. And then this one, I'm assuming it's part of the Junior Rose Bowl because of the roses, but I could not find anything to figure out what that trophy was. But as usual, the university does have this trophy as well on display at the Bailey Center. So if you go to campus, go inside, it's going to be on the opposite side of where the coffee bowl is located. So you can go in there, you can see it. They do have original ticket stubs from the games, photographs. They have a program from, this is going to be from the Lions Bowl that they went to in 1952, I believe. So they have all this available at the Bailey Center, and then here's a photograph from earlier with the entire football squad. So it was a monumental occasion for the university to have that. This was a huge achievement for this small little college, up and starting college that was only around for 20 years at that point, to win a junior national championship. That is a huge ordeal, and I think that's something, if you're an alumni, if you're a student, or if you live here in Little Rock, we should all be proud that this is something that we can hang our hats on. But similar to where we were at in the 30s, mid-30s, we kind of have a moment of decline. So Jimmy Carm ends up leaving the university. He decides he wants to start his own clothing business. However, he was involved with he was a part of anti-segregation efforts to allow integration within Arkansas schools. So he was very good friends with Orville Falvis, and up in Fayetteville, there's a FBI report that was taken, and it was a not oral history, kind of a transcript of what the conversation was. And that's available online if you go online to search it. But he ends up, eventually, he's inducted into the UA Little Rock Athletics Hall of Fame in 1992 for his efforts, because he is the winningest head coach for the football program, but also the football team, the 1949 squad, would eventually be inducted in 2006. So they got that recognition that they so rightly deserve, that they won a junior college national championship to represent the university. But also, so they continue on, as you can tell, 50, we had good results. 51, I think we won, before the loss at the Lions Bowl, which that was in Mississippi, Laurel, Mississippi, actually. They were kind of not undefeated, but they were 5-1 with that loss at the Lions Bowl. They ended up having a losing season. But that's going to be, in comparison to the other seasons, I mean, they're still winning some football games. They still go through some different carousels with their coaching. So Howard Pierce was the athletics director at that time, but he decided to step away from football because he just did not have a calling to do it. So he ended up going and being the basketball coach on campus. And then Marvin Greer was only around for a year, and he just was like, I don't like this. I'm out of here. So with that, he eventually, the last head coach was Woody Johnson, and he was just a football coach. He was from Smackover, and he was a football coach there. And then they decided, do you want to be a college football coach? He's like, yeah, I'll come and join. But he also served as the athletic director as well. But after 55, they still continued to play some football, but the university ultimately decided after the 55 season that the university couldn't keep football. It wasn't going to hit the same heights as what it did in 1949 under the Karam era. So they believed it was because what they were cited for declining revenue from home games. There was not as many people coming to home games in comparison to under the Karam era, where they were winning football games constantly. And if you have a winning football team, they will come. Unlike, well, you can also do that in baseball and other sports. But they also thought at that time the increased popularity and having televised football games, that was on the rise as well. But also Fayetteville at that time, the Razorbacks team was increasing in popularity because they were winning games and they were getting ahead of steam. And then eventually they would come and play at War Memorial on a regular basis. So they ultimately decided to get rid of the football program on New Year's Eve in 1955. So now we come to what we have currently. So our current football program, we don't have a football program, sorry. You do not understand how much football I have looked into. But however, they did try to bring back football. There was some student initiatives that they wanted to bring back football. About 1,000 students had signed a petition saying that they wanted to have a feasibility study done to see if the university could bring back football. However, that was not the case because the athletic budget would have to double in order to sustain having a football team. So it was not in the cards. And that was announced in 2019. But they also, if we have a football team, marching band would also have to come as well. And that would cost another $300,000 to maintain a marching band and also buy football equipment. That's any kind of sports equipment is expensive. I play tennis, and that is, whoa. You can just spend money just on wraps and things. But the university just said they couldn't afford it. But also under Title IX, the university would had to included 2 additional female sports to incorporate having a football program. And the university just did not see that their budget could sustain that. So they ended up eventually saying no, and since then it hasn't really come up since. But as a whole, the football team did kind of lay the groundworks for the university to have an athletics program, even though it was kind of off and on, hit and miss. but I believe from my research, starting in the eighties is when sports kind of hit its stride and Little Rock was being a little bit in the spotlight. Yeah, we're not in the SEC or ACC, any of these big Power Five conferences. But the university was a mid conference powerhouse. Fun fact, in I think it was 1986, they became the first number 14 seed in the men's basketball tournament to beat a number 3 seed, and that was against Notre Dame. So that's a whole other how. I'm gonna love-hate relationship with Notre Dame, but also, I mean, even in recent memory, basketball continued to be a popular sport, but also in the recent last 20 years, women's volleyball has become a really popular sport. Women's basketball as well. Joe Foley, who is the former basketball coach, I believe he was top 15 most winningest women's basketball head coaches ever. I mean, the men's baseball team just went to the NCAA playoffs or postseason play, and they won a couple of games, which had not happened before. Even the men's wrestling team as well, they had their instances of making it to the NCAA tournament as well, having qualifiers, individual wrestlers qualify for the tournament as well. But there's also been NCAA champions in women's tennis as well. So they had that in the 80s and 90s. And then, yeah, the university has really enjoyed success on the mid level of being in the Sun Belt when it was Sun Belt. But also then now being in the Ohio Valley Conference, they have enjoyed success there as well. But it's all because it started with football, gave them that opportunity and chance to lay the groundwork and to have kind of a foundation to know that the university can play sports. We can entice and get students to come from across the nation to come here to Little Rock and play. So I think that's a proud achievement for this university that they can have, that we can hang our hats on, because without the football program, I don't really know where our athletics program could possibly be. But I mean, we have the moniker of being Little Rock's team. So that's, I think, a proud thing that the university can promote, that with our athletics program, we can be very open and honest to shine that light and to be a team that that the locals can be proud of, on top of the Razorbacks, because it seems like anytime I ever see something Razorbacks in the news, y'all go crazy about it. I mean, I can't say anything. I have started to join in the fray as well. So, but I am gonna open it up. I know I kind of went through a lot of things, so I'm gonna allow y'all to ask questions if you have any questions or anything. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate y'all coming out and learning about the football team. So thank you all for coming.
Anyone have any questions? I'm gonna bring you the mic just so the folks on Zoom will hear your question.
I know there was many years, but the roster, were they local players, players from athletes from Arkansas that made up most of the roster over all those years?
Yeah, a lot of Central Arkansas players came to play at Little Rock because a lot of other colleges in the areas wouldn't have a football team, so they really did attract primarily here in Little Rock, well, eventually what would become North Little Rock. They did have some out-of-state players, primarily after 47, they started having an influx a little bit, but it was still a majority of Arkansas players in Central Arkansas.
Well, just some thoughts, because my dad was at Little Rock Junior College, 1939 through 1940. And because of that, I know that at that time, only 5% of Americans had a bachelor's degree. So college was really a very elite sort of thing. And I don't think the enrollment of Little Rock Junior College ever went above 250. So when they were putting this football team together, it was really a tiny thing. And when they did away with the football team, my dad got his nose broken in one of those intramural teams. So that always started a conversation about football at Little Rock Junior College. Then the big boom after World War II, the GI Bill it wasn't such a big, impossible deal to be able to go to college and get an education.
Yeah, that's a great point that you made about the GI Bill. That was one of the big things for the football program, that they get these GIs who had played some football on their wherever they were stationed, there could be a football team. Some of these kids came back from World War II and they wanted to play sports and they had the opportunity here to play that. So you made a really good point.
Just a reminder for folks on Zoom, you're welcome to put any questions in the chat. I don't have anything yet, so I just wanted to remind them. Anybody else in the room have any questions? Yeah.
Really a question, I'm an alumni, by the way. My grandfather was Woody Johnson, and this is my mom, that was her dad. So she was actually a cheerleader.
Oh, that's so cool.
Times, that's one of my dearest memories, is when I lived in Little Rock, cause we moved everywhere, but that was a fun 3 years we lived there, and Dad coached there.
Well, it might be in our yearbooks that we have over here on display over here, so you never know. I know. Thank you. That's so sweet to hear that. I would love to talk more with you about like what your time was like on campus.
Right, I was just starting in the 2nd grade when we moved there,
Okay.
and from there we moved to West Memphis, and my father ended up coaching at Southwestern, which is Rhodes College, and he taught or coached football, basketball, and baseball there. And
Very
he
cool.
was there for, I think, about 4 years, so,
Okay.
yeah, we were into it.
I just need to set up a time and talk with you more. I could only imagine the stories that you got.
She moved a lot, probably more than military families,
Okay.
but my grandfather was actually born in Black Oak, not
Oh.
Smackover, and lived in Parkin.
Oh, okay.
And we're all from Memphis originally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Really enjoyed it too.
Thank you. That means a lot to hear that.
Kyle Wilkins asks, are there any active petitions currently to bring back football? Anything since that 2019 push?
Unfortunately, no. I haven't read anything or seen anything. I've seen a Facebook page that was from 2017, but that one's been dormant since the feasibility study from 2019. But that's a great question. I've been curious if the student body would be interested in trying to fight for a football team again.
James, did you come across any oral histories of people who lived in Little Rock that maybe were talking about that 1949 moment, which I understand was really huge, not only for the university, but the entire community? And did you, in your research, see any sort of responses to what was going on at the university at the time?
Unfortunately, I didn't find any oral histories or interviews or anything. I wish if anyone knows if anyone from the 1949 football team is still around, please get in contact with me. I would love to talk to y'all about that. From my research, from what I found, the only thing that I could possibly think of is the student newspaper at that time, the Chatter, which was the name of it, but I did not have a chance to go through those. But a lot of my research with Jim Lester's book, The People's College, but also going through the newspapers and seeing what people were saying at that time was the extent of the oral history per se that I was able to find that information from.
Angelita asks, before they implemented athletic scholarships, did the student athletes receive any kind of compensation for being on the football team?
Very minimal from what I've discovered. We got to take a step back from 2025 and how expensive like universities are to back then. They got, I think, maybe just a pittance of like a scholarship. It was only like $25, $50 to be able to play. But back then, that's a lot of money to be able to have. But housing, I think Jimmy Karen he was interviewed by the newspaper and he stated, he was like, the dorms, were so poorly housed, they're like, this is not sustainable for a football team or even student athletes or even just a person to stay in. But he was able to get the university to pony up some money, build kind of like a residence hall, and that's where they housed everyone, particularly with the football team. But they didn't really have, it was honestly a pittance to what they could give the football players.
Do we have any more questions from the in-person audience? All right, well, thank you so much, James. Don't run away because we have raffle. That's how I get you to stay in your chairs.